My name is Clara Whitmore. I am 35 years old, and I'm a billionaire businesswoman. 6 months ago, my husband disappeared in the middle of the night. He left nothing behind except divorce papers. My father told me not to wait for him. He called him a beggar who was never worthy of our family name. But I refused to sign, because the man I loved would never leave without a reason. Then, 6 months later, while visiting one of my construction sites, I saw him, my missing husband, working there as a construction laborer. And when he finally told me why he left that night, everything inside me froze. Before I reveal what really happened, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop your country in the comments. Now, let's get started. People often think money solves everything. In my case, it only made things more complicated. I was born into a very powerful family. My father built one of the largest real estate companies in the country. By the time I was 30, I had already taken over a big part of the business. Newspapers called me a billionaire. Business magazines loved to write about my success. But none of those things mattered to me as much as my family. My husband, Julian, was the complete opposite of the world I grew up in. He wasn't rich. He didn't come from a powerful background. In fact, the first time my father met him, he looked at Julian's simple clothes and whispered to me later, "People like him don't belong in our world." But Julian never cared about status. He was kind, calm, honest, the type of man who fixed things around the house himself instead of calling workers, the type who remembered small details about people, the type who could make our daughter laugh even on the worst days. And that was the reason I loved him. We had been married for 7 years. Our daughter Lily had just turned 5. To the outside world, our life looked perfect. But inside my father's mansion, tension was always there. My father never accepted Julian. He never said it directly in front of him, but I could see it in his eyes. Every dinner with my family felt like a silent battle. One night after Julian left the table early to put Lily to bed, my father leaned toward me. "You still have time to fix this mistake," he said coldly. I frowned. "What mistake? This marriage?" I stared at him. "You should marry someone who strengthens our empire," he continued. "My best friend's son would be perfect for you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Dad, I'm already married. You can change that." His voice was calm, but the words were heavy. "I love Julian," I said quietly. My father leaned back in his chair. "Love doesn't build empires," he replied. I didn't answer him that night, but I never forgot those words. Still, life continued. Julian and I ignored the tension as much as we could. We focused on our daughter, our home, our quiet moments together. Everything felt normal until the night everything changed. It was a rainy evening. I came home late from work after a long meeting with investors. The house felt unusually quiet. Normally, Lily would run toward me the moment I entered the door. But that night, there was only silence. "Julian," I called out. No answer. I walked into the living room, and that's when I saw it. A white envelope on the table, my name written on it. My hands suddenly felt cold as I opened it. Inside were divorce papers, signed by Julian. My heart started pounding. This had to be some kind of mistake. I searched the entire house. His clothes were gone. His phone was off. Even Lily's small suitcase was missing. My daughter was gone too. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I called him again and again. Nothing. I contacted his friends. No one knew where he was. The entire night passed in panic. By morning, my father arrived at the house. I don't even remember calling him. Maybe one of the staff did. He walked into the living room, looked at the papers on the table, and sighed. "So he finally did it," he said. I looked up at him, shocked. "What do you mean?" "He left," my father said calmly. "Men like him always do." My hands were shaking. "He took Lily," I whispered. "He'll bring her back eventually," my father replied dismissively. Then he picked up the divorce papers. "You should sign these." I stared at him. "What?" "You heard me," he said. Don't waste your time waiting for that beggar. Anger burned in my chest. He's my husband. He was your husband, my father corrected. Now sign the papers and move on. I pushed the documents away. No. My father's eyes hardened. You're embarrassing yourself. I'm not signing anything, I said firmly. He already left you. Then I'll find him. My father laughed softly. You're a billionaire, Clarma. Do you really want to chase a man who clearly ran away? But something inside me refused to believe Julian would leave like this, not without a reason, not without a single word. So I folded the papers and placed them back on the table. I'm not signing, I said again. My father looked at me for a long moment, then he shook his head. You'll regret this. Maybe he thought I would give up after a few days, but he didn't understand one thing. I loved my husband, and I wasn't going to stop searching for him. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. 6 months passed. No messages, no calls, no trace. Until the day I visited one of our construction sites and saw something that made my entire world stop. It was supposed to be a normal visit. One of our biggest projects was being built on the edge of the city, a large apartment complex that my company had invested millions into. I had meetings scheduled there with the project managers. The morning felt ordinary. Cars moved in and out of the site, workers carried tools, the loud sound of machines filled the air. I stepped out of my car wearing a simple business suit and a white safety helmet. The site manager walked beside me explaining progress. We're ahead of schedule, Miss Whitmore, he said proudly. I nodded politely, but my mind wasn't fully there. Even after 6 months, part of me was still searching for Julian. Every crowd, every street, every stranger's face, my eyes had learned to look for him without me even realizing it. We walked deeper into the site. Dust floated in the air. Workers moved between metal beams and unfinished walls. Then suddenly, my feet stopped. My heart skipped. Across the construction area, a man was lifting a heavy bag of cement onto his shoulder. His clothes were dirty. His hair was longer than I remembered. His face was covered in dust. But I knew that face, even from a distance, even after 6 months. It was Julian. For a moment, my brain refused to believe what I was seeing. My husband, the man who used to sit beside me at elegant business dinners, was standing there wearing worn-out work clothes, working as a laborer. My breathing became uneven. Miss Whitmore, the manager asked, confused, when I stopped walking, but I didn't answer. I was already moving fast. My heels sank slightly into the dirt as I walked across the site. Closer, closer. My heart pounded louder with every step. Julian turned slightly while adjusting the bag on his shoulder, and our eyes met. The moment he saw me, his entire body froze. Shock filled his face. The cement bag slipped from his shoulder and dropped heavily to the ground. Workers nearby were looking at him in confusion, but I didn't care about them. All I could see was him. 6 months. 6 months of questions. 6 months of pain. 6 months of silence. And now he was standing right in front of me like nothing had happened. Anger exploded inside my chest. Before I even realized what I was doing, my hand moved. The sound of the slap echoed across the site. Julian didn't try to stop it. He didn't move. He simply looked at me. His eyes were tired, hollow. Why? I demanded. My voice shook. Why did you do this? Workers nearby had stopped moving. Everyone was watching us now, but I didn't care. You disappeared, I shouted. You took our daughter. The man my father called a beggar was the only man who ever truly loved you. Left divorce papers like I meant nothing to you. Julian stayed silent. That silence only made the anger stronger. I searched for you for 6 months, I continued. 6 months, Julian. Finally, he spoke. Clara, please lower your voice. Don't tell me what to do. My hands were shaking. You think you can just disappear from our lives and then show up here like this? He looked down for a moment, then back at me. You shouldn't have found me. Those words felt like another slap. What does that even mean? Julian took a slow breath. Then he glanced around at the workers watching us. Not here, he said quietly. Here, I replied firmly. He studied my face. Maybe he realized I wasn't leaving without answers. Finally, he spoke again. Your father came to see me the night before I left. My anger paused for a second. My father? Julian nodded slowly. He didn't come alone. A strange feeling crept into my chest. What are you talking about? Julian's voice became heavier. He brought two men with him. My stomach tightened. He told me something very simple, Julian continued quietly. If I didn't disappear from your life, he would make sure our daughter never saw another birthday. For a moment, I thought I heard him wrong. My brain refused to process the words. What? Julian didn't look away. He said I was a stain on your family name, he continued. He said I was embarrassing his empire. My heart began beating faster. He wanted you to marry his best friend's son, Julian added, the same man my father had mentioned months earlier. Suddenly, pieces started falling into place. Julian continued speaking. He told me to sign the divorce papers and leave quietly. My throat felt dry. And if he didn't? I whispered. Julian looked directly into my eyes. Then he said, Lily would disappear. The world around me suddenly felt very quiet. The noise of machines, the voices of workers, everything faded. Only Julian's voice remained. He warned me not to tell you, Julian said. He said if you ever found out the truth, his people would know. My chest tightened painfully. So you just left? I asked weakly. Julian nodded. I had no choice. His voice broke slightly. I thought disappearing was the only way to keep you both safe. I stared at him. The man standing in front of me wasn't the confident husband I remembered. He looked exhausted, like life had been slowly crushing him for months. I've been working here for 4 months, he continued quietly, moving from one site to another, so your father's people wouldn't find me. My hands slowly dropped to my sides. My father? The man I trusted my whole life? The man who told me Julian left because he found another woman? The man who forced me to sign the divorce papers? Julian watched my face carefully. You didn't know, he said softly. I shook my head slowly. No. My voice was barely a whisper. I didn't. And in that moment, the truth hit me so hard I couldn't breathe. For several seconds, I couldn't say anything. I just stood there, staring at Julian. Dust covered his clothes. His hands were rough. His face looked older, more tired than the last time I had seen him. 6 months? 6 months he had been living like this. Not because he wanted to, but because my father forced him to. My chest felt tight. I thought you stopped loving me, I whispered. Julian shook his head immediately. Clara, I never stopped loving you. His voice was quiet but firm. I left because I thought it was the only way to keep you and Lily safe. My eyes filled with tears. Where is she? I asked quickly. Julian's expression softened a little. She's safe, he said. I left her with my sister. Your father's people don't know about her. Relief washed through me so strongly my knees almost gave out. My daughter was safe. But something else was rising inside me now, something much stronger than sadness. Anger gnawed at Julian, at my father. All those months he watched me suffer. He watched me search for my husband. He watched me cry, and he said nothing. Instead, he kept repeating the same lie. He left you for money. My hands slowly curled into fists. Julian looked at me carefully. What are you thinking? I wiped the tears from my face. I'm thinking, I said quietly, that my father believes he controls my life. Julian frowned slightly. Clara, don't do anything reckless. I looked at him. For 6 months, I believed you abandoned me. My voice hardened. Now I know the truth. Julian stayed silent. I'm not letting him destroy our family. That same evening, I made several calls. The next week, my father organized a large family gathering at his mansion. It wasn't unusual. He often invited relatives and business partners to show off his success. That night, the house was filled with people. My uncles, my cousins, my father's closest business friends, and sitting proudly beside my father was the man he always wanted me to marry, his best friend's son. My father stood near the center of the room, smiling confidently as he spoke to guests. He believed everything was going according to his plan. When I walked into the room, people turned to look at me. "Clara," my father said with a satisfied smile, "you're finally here." His eyes briefly studied my face. "You look better," he added. "I assume you finally accepted reality." I didn't answer. I simply walked toward him. Everyone in the room grew quiet. My father noticed the silence and raised his glass slightly. "I was just telling everyone," he said proudly, "that my daughter will soon make a decision that will strengthen our family's future." I looked around the room. Every face was watching. Perfect. "Actually," I said calmly, "I have something to say too." My father's smile faded slightly. "What is it?" I took a slow breath. "For 6 months," I began, "my father told me my husband left because he wanted money." People shifted uncomfortably. My father's expression tightened. "Clara," but I continued, "he called him a beggar." A few people exchanged glances, and he pushed me to sign the divorce papers. My father stepped closer to me. "That's enough." But I wasn't finished. "Do you know what really happened?" I asked the room. Silence filled the mansion. Then I looked directly at my father. "You threatened him." A wave of whispers spread through the crowd. "You told him if he didn't disappear," I continued slowly, "you would kill his daughter." My father's face turned pale. "That's a lie," he said quickly, but his voice lacked confidence. I stepped closer. "The man you called worthless spent 6 months working as a construction laborer just to protect his family." The room had gone completely silent. My father's friends looked at him with shock. His best friend slowly lowered his glass. "I destroyed my marriage," I said. "You made me believe my husband betrayed me." My father clenched his jaw. "I did what was best for you." "No," I replied calmly. "You did what was best for your business." The words hung in the air. Then I took off the diamond ring my father had given me years ago, the symbol of our family empire, and placed it on the table. "You can keep your empire." Gasps echoed around the room. My father stared at me in disbelief. "You're being emotional," he said. I shook my head. "No." Then I said the words he never expected to hear. "I choose my family." I turned toward the door. "And my family is not in this house." My father's voice rose behind me. "If you walk out now, don't expect to come back." I paused for 1 second, but I didn't turn around. Then I continued walking. Outside the mansion gates, a car was waiting. Julian stood beside it. Clean clothes, but the same tired eyes. When he saw me walking towards him, uncertainty crossed his face. I stopped in front of him. "Are you ready to go home?" I asked surprisingly. "Home?" I smiled slightly. "Wherever we go together." For a moment, he said nothing. Then he nodded. We got into the car and drove away, leaving behind the mansion, the empire, and the man who thought power mattered more than family. But the truth was simple. The man my father called a beggar was the only man who ever truly loved.